We're better together with Ann and Heather.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Better Together with Ann and Heather. We have such a fun guest today, a woman that we really bonded with, I would say. Mariel Hemingway is our guest, and we cannot wait for you to listen.
We actually got to get a road trip out of the experience. We went up to Santa Barbara for the weekend for this interview and had a blast.
I think it was probably one of the funnest times I've ever had. I think I can admit that.
Yeah, we really did have fun. We shopped. We went to a little store in Montecito, Maison K.
And met some other lovely ladies.
Drank champagne and shopped, which is so decadent. And, but we did it under the guise of wanting to support a local business, which made us feel better about spending the day shopping and drinking champagne.
Yes, but we'd also run out of, funnily enough, clothing in both of our closets to be unique and fresh. And we also had the guise of, we're doing this for Better Together so we can
we had all sorts of excuses to shop. You know what? Normal people don't need excuses to shop. Why do we always we're so defensive when we're not working? It's like,
not only
we're allowed to shop. We're allowed to go shopping like two girls.
I know, but you're the only woman I've ever met who does not shop. You never get anything for yourself. And of course, I have two sons in private school. I don't. That's why it was so much fun.
Yeah, it was so much fun. And we love Santa Barbara. That's kind of I love that Santa Barbara. And Montecito is my end game if all goes according to plan.
Absolutely. We're going to get a beach house there.
Okay.
And also thank you to Jeremiah, who we were on the Jeremiah show. And we spoke about some things that we're going to be delving into today, the reality of what is going on. Heather, why don't you take us into In the Moment?
In the moment.
Well, I mean, we're really switching gears with my In the Moment. But as I was driving here, I was stuck in traffic and I thought, oh my God, we're back. Like the traffic in Los Angeles is just back. And I thought about 1 year ago and where we were at 1 year ago. 1 year ago, the streets were quiet. And if we had been told a year ago that we were about to go through what we've been through, we would never have believed that 2.8 million people would die from COVID, that 128 million people would get COVID, that the U.S. would spend more than 2.1 trillion on COVID and they're not even done yet, that restaurants and food service sales would be 240 billion below their 2020 pre-pandemic earnings. More than 110 restaurants closed last year. 2.5 million restaurant industry jobs disappeared. And that's just one industry affected by COVID. We haven't even touched on travel and the damn dry cleaners. And Ann and I, we were talking about how COVID is the one time in our history that everybody around the world is going through the exact same thing at the exact same time. And it's really hard to think about any other time in our world where that has happened, certainly in our lifetime. And we like to think that it unifies us in a way that has never happened before. And I
think it's the one time that we can all agree on something. It's so difficult in the division culture that we've been living with to imagine that we could all 100% of humanity has been through something together. And that really bonds us in a unique way, I think.
And I guess I bring all this up because I had my first COVID vaccine yesterday. And I had a reaction that I wasn't expecting. And it was really sort of dramatic for me in a way.
How?
Well, I went into this Walgreens in the middle of LA and again, we're never shopping. So I'm in a Walgreens and I'm in line. So I'm thinking, oh, I can grab some things, When do you ever in a Walgreens? How luxurious, right?
Right.
So I try to get a basket or a cart. They tell me they don't have any. All the homeless people have taken them all. And, on my way there, you see all the people suffering from mental health. and it was just, just the heaviness of the COVID. And so I'm in line. I don't have my bag. My hands are full. I go behind this curtain and I'm wearing something first that like isn't shot friendly. She couldn't reach my shoulder. On? No, they don't do it in your butt. They do it in your arm. But I was wearing a sweatshirt. Actually, this sweatshirt, this sweatshirt, my arm is sore. That's why I said ow. And so I had to pull it down and, so she's closing the curtain and she puts the shot in me. And the second the shot goes in me and she puts the Band-Aid on and I step away, I'm like, holy shit, I think I'm going to cry. And I'm not going to cry because it hurt. I just didn't expect the emotion of getting that shot and just everything rolling over me of what has happened in the last year, of all the lives lost, of all the pain that people have gone through, and how we just waited for this miracle shot. It just kind of was a culmination of so many thoughts and feelings and emotions that I just didn't expect from getting a shot in the arm. And it was just it was kind of a powerful moment in my own head.
It's like it literally pinpointed the place that we've all been. I think we've all wondered if we would get to the other side. That question mark that we all were unified in asking, is it ever going to end? And I think it's the first time that we are beginning to feel like there's a lift and that perhaps we're going to get to the other side. And that's really what I want to commit to. I want to commit to a new day. I want to commit to a new way. And by saying that, I want to commit myself to believing and seeing and agreeing and activating more fun.
Agreed.
For each other, for ourselves. We've all suffered a lot, and I think we need some fun tips, which is why we do and we're doing better together, really talking about how to lift this up, lift this spirit. I think we want to say, like, do something silly for people. You were saying, call a friend.
Check in on people. That's not really silly, but it's just
you don't need to
say,
spend
are you
money
okay?
to share love. Look at somebody. Plant a plant. Do something for your neighbor. Help somebody with their. We have to readjust our physical bodies even, and I think that's going to take some attunement.
Sorry, I was making a fat joke.
Well, I think a lot of people feel like all of a sudden they're going to have to jog. But to get used to each other again. But we can do it with a smile. We can do it with, can I help you? Can I help you? We haven't been able to touch each other. We haven't been able to smile at each other. The simple things that we took for granted in terms of communicating what it is to feel just kindness from another. So the challenge is, like, let's step forth and think when we wake up, like, what can I do for somebody today? Like, why not? So we are going to say goodbye to the sorrow planet of yore and say hello to my new planet, which Heather and I hope she comes along with me on this. Let's call this planet fun. And it has my name in the middle. I was going to say Planet Ann, but I think you're
not that egotistical.
Planet Fun because because
this is
it's
my
better
planet.
together.
We all just live here.
I want us to be together on the planet, so that's why it's called Planet Fun. Let's commit to making this planet.
Summer's
fun.
coming. Let's have some fun. And this episode talks mostly about the struggles of mental health. We also get some stories from Muriel about her life in Hollywood that we think you'll find interesting. But in talking about mental health, it's important. It's important to check in with each other and make sure that the people around you are okay. And
well, by saying mental health is we have all gone through a crisis that has affected all of us and all of us in different and unique ways. So let's have some compassion for others and what they've been through. We don't know everybody's story. We don't know what everyone has gone through. Some people, and God bless them, share the wealth, had a really good time during COVID, being isolated, being with their lover and not having to go to terrible jobs. Cher, said it was the best year ever because she could go and be incognito. But in the service to what is next, let us move forth with kindness for others, share some compassion, and also think about deepening our respect for those that we see that we don't quite understand. And that's really what we're going to be talking about in more depth with our conversation.
Okay, we hope you enjoy the interview with Mariel Hemingway, coming to you from Santa Barbara, California.
We're better together with Ann and Heather.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Better Together with Ann and Heather. Today might be the day that I pick a favorite. I know you're not supposed to do that, but I have the pleasure of saying that my favorite guest so far is on, and we haven't even started talking to her again. Mariel Hemingway is on the show with us today, and I couldn't be happier to find a sisterhood.
Mariel Hemingway is a mother, a Golden Globe and Academy Award nominated actress. She continues her family legacy as the granddaughter of Ernest Hemingway. She is also an author and has written about her life in a book called Out Came the Sun, and has written a memoir about yoga, Finding My Balance, and a book about living your best life called The Willing Way. Mariel is an advocate for mental health and suicide prevention. Ultimately, she's someone whom we respect for the honesty in which she lives her life. And if you've listened to any of our shows, you know that honesty is a big part of being better together, because it reminds us that we are not alone and gives us the opportunity to learn from each other. We welcome Mariel Hemingway into the Better Together tribe.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. It's such a special day for me to meet a fellow survivor.
Yeah.
And I did say to Heather last night, we had the pleasure of viewing. It was difficult for me. In fact, I'm as I'm talking about it, I'm shaking a little bit. Your documentary called "Running from Crazy," and I want to tell you how much that meant to me as a survivor and also as a fellow speaker of truth and belief that in sharing our stories, we can help people share their own so that they can come into the healing world of living in joy and loving kindness and health. And you are the embodiment of that. Is there a moment when you decided, I'm going to do something different than what I had seen working in my family or not working in your case? How did you begin?
Oh, wow. Well, I think that, and you probably can relate to this. I think that, the journey of our life is complex and weird. And when you're a child, you think, well, for me, I chose a role. And the role was I'm going to help everybody and fix everybody, even as a kid. And not like from a glorious standpoint, like I thought that I was so great. But I really thought, well, it looks as though people are pretty preoccupied with their drinking and their fighting and their whatever. And it wasn't always like that, to be fair, but there was a tremendous amount of tension and unhappiness in my house. And I thought, well, if I could be the person that can make it nice and make it better and clean up the mess in the middle of the night, and we can wake up and we can pretend like it didn't happen. If I could be that person. So I did that for many years, and I played that role. I got married and I played that role, and my husband got cancer and he drank as well. And there were things about, and no judgment on that, but my role continued as being this person thinking that she knew what was going on. And it was really late in my life, like late or mid 40s, where I really decided that I need to do this differently. And I need to look at myself instead of the patterns that I've created, which they were, quote unquote, healthy and they looked right. But I didn't really have a knowing inside myself of what it meant to be completely at ease. So there are a lot of things. I mean, I've followed many different gurus and I've eaten different ways, thinking that, like if I ate pineapple all day long for 17 months, that was going to change things. It didn't. Just gave me a lot of gas. But, you think when you are surviving a life instead of thriving in a life, you will do anything that you can to just be okay. So I followed doctors. I thought that, this holistic doctor, that holistic doctor, this guru, I'll put a dot on my head. I'll sweat in a lodge. I'll do this.
But it seems like it's about control. Like, and reading your book, I think you even said that your life was sort of out of control. So everything that you could control, you did, which I think makes a heck of a lot of sense.
Well, it makes a lot of sense, but at the same time, when you start to understand how the universe works, who has control? Nobody has control.
Right.
And yet, the interior, so I'll tell you a story. So I followed all these gurus. I followed all these people. I followed these doctors. And at one point I went to India. I'd been several times before, by the way. And I went to India again, and I went with the entire family, but we were going to have a private audience with His Holiness, the Dalai Lama.
Oh my goodness.
Right. And I was like, oh, this is super exciting. I mean, I'd met him kind of like formally somewhere in LA at one point.
I did. I met him at UCLA. My best friend took me like, it's your birthday present. And it's a huge honor. We stood in line. And I was like, I met him.
I'm sure he saw me.
Yeah. Yes. He was looking at 100% you, I can guarantee.
Right. So I went to Dharamsala. I was in my mid 40s. It was and when I say private audience, it was like 10 people, chose.
It's private for the Dalai.
And it sounds like she had a better gig than you.
I know, she really did. She must be more famous.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't think I had anything to do with making it fantastic because they were all like, I mean, everybody that was there was like really like smart and heads of corporations and, like Viacom and, the New York Times and shit. There's me.
And they're all going like, oh my God, I'm the head of the New York Times, but Mariel Hemingway is here. Holy shit, I don't deserve to be here.
I doubt it. Anyway, so he comes into this little room. It wasn't grand. And it was kind of perfect because you think of the Dalai Lama and you think of happiness, and you think of joy, and you think, oh, it must be grand. I mean, wasn't he supposed to be the king or something, or whatever? He comes down this little staircase, and when I say little, it really was. And there was like chairs, like kind of overstuffed chairs, and it was funky, and it was cool.
But so surprisingly, not what you would think His Holiness is.
Exactly.
And would be surrounded by. There was no throne. There were no jewels.
No, it wasn't meeting the Queen of England. It was meeting, it was meeting like a very humble and wonderful soul.
Wow.
So he comes down the stairs and he comes out of the room and he's got his white things around his neck and he's smiling and he looks around and he comes down the stairs, and then we're all standing, we're all nervous and scared and stupid.
Is he going to see what's wrong with me? He's going to definitely know what's wrong with me. I think I'll turn away.
He must be psychic.
If he's that holy.
So everybody sits down, and I'm sort of standing where he has come, and he sits down in a chair, and he nods to me to sit down next to him, and I'm like, holy shit! He asked me to sit next to him. I was just like freaking out. I mean,
am I say shit? Oh, holy Uranus.
Holy Uranus. Anyway, so I sit down, and it was not anything that he said or that anybody else said, because all those fabulous erudite people really had amazing questions for him and talking about real serious issues about the world and wars and this and that and the other thing. And he would periodically look over to me and he would smile and he would giggle. And my thing is, if I'm nervous, I giggle. Like, I'm trying trying to keep it together. And he would just look at it. But I started to think, well, I must be having like an unspoken like thing with His Holiness. Anyway, what I really want to say here about the meeting that was incredible to me, that really struck my heart, is that I did watch him, with all joking aside, and he was looking at me and smiling now and again, but I watched him listen to people in a way that I'd never seen anybody listen before, like taking somebody in. And he said very little, but when he did speak, he was so there, he was so present, and he said very little, but it was an extension of his listening. That just struck me. So an hour and a half goes by. I don't really know what's being said. I just know that I'm in the presence of somebody who is completely present, completely loving, and completely kind. And if you've never really experienced what that means, it's kind of mind-blowing. Anyway, it's wrapping up, and like the monks are kind of coming out, like it's enough time. Yeah. So I start to stand up off the chair, and he puts his hand on my hand, and he looks me in the eye, and he said, "You're okay." And I stopped, and I looked at him, and I smiled, and he nodded his head. And it wasn't like rockets went off, and it wasn't a psychic moment. He saw me, and it's like he saw that I was constantly struggling. And it was in that moment. So your first question is like, when was that moment? It was in that moment that I realized I was okay. And it was like, oh shit. This grabbing outside myself, constantly doing this, like to a healer, to a this, to a diet, to a exercise, to a to a movie, whatever it was, to define me. Yes. That was I'll find a solution here. I'll find a solution there. I'll find, and I'll feel better. I'll feel better. I'll feel unbroken. And when he said that I wasn't broken, I was okay, I realized, and that was the moment that I said, oh, and everybody's okay. And that's what I was like, oh, holy crap. Wow. The whole world changes when you start to realize that nobody's broken. Nobody's, yes, people suffer, people have, and they do, and they will, and they, whatever. But the truth of us, and you're talking about truth, the truth of all of us is okay. Well, I think that was the moment. That I change, yes. And this is the clapping. It's important that people listening really hear that, because I know that you do a lot of work around mental health and suicide prevention. And I think that that's one of the things with suicide, is that in that moment when people make that decision to take their life, they don't realize that it's not okay in that moment, but it's going to be okay again. Right. And that's the thing that everybody, I think it's just an important thing to remind people of, even in the darkest time. It's gonna get better. It's not always gonna be like it is in that moment. Everything changes, and we don't realize that. That's what, that dark night of the soul. It seems so like, I can't get out of here. I can't see light. But the truth that that's not real. It's not real, and it has to change, because the universe is not designed to stay stagnant. We're not, night turns to day, day turns to night, things, it's constant. It's a flux of energy. And I think that that's, like, if we can help people to understand, everything will shift. Right. It doesn't mean it won't be painful. It doesn't mean that you have to do some work. But once you start really chipping away at that icky feeling, you start to realize also that it's not so icky anymore. Or even telling the story becomes, the more, like, I'm sure you feel this way, the more you tell the story, it's just like, it's
oh Lord, it's like a shopping list. This one happened, that one died, the other one died of AIDS, this one went on, that one had mental illness, this one guy had a brain tumor. Yeah.
And it's not that you're making light of it. It's just, it's the past. It's a story. It's made you who you are, but it's also allowed you the freedom of or the courage to tell the story gives you the freedom to live your life.
Well, and there's very few times when you think logic can come into play, because our emotional selves say, oh my God, this is the only thing that's happening and it's me and I'm consumed by it. And there is no other thing that tells me I can come up and out and look and say, you know what, the next moment is going to be okay. Which I would like to say right now is something that our listeners can do. And I'm going to call it the Mariel Hemingway challenge to look at yourself in the mirror after your next bath or shower moment before you go to bed and look at yourself and say, I'm okay. Until now, some tears are going to come, because the day that you tell yourself you're okay is the day you start living your life for yourself.
Exactly.
But you have to believe it. And that's the challenge. And
that
is
the challenge.
Is going to take you as much time. One of the things that I like to encourage is the concept that our habits have been formed based on our brokenness. And our habits can be changed in the moment we decide to change them. So when we say, I'm okay, I am changing the habit of thinking that I'm not.
Exactly.
And that activation is something that you can wear as your new cloak of honor to provide yourself with the strength to know that you are. Mariel just told you, you are okay. And I'm telling you too. And so is Heather, because we are better together in the presence of wisdom. And that's why we share. I remember I was on a soap opera when I was young. It was my first job and I didn't know, we didn't even have a TV. When they asked me to audition, I said, yeah, sure. What's a soap opera? and I call what I had, and I want to talk to you about the body, the literal physical container you have created for yourself and inspired others to be. My physical body was what I called doused in shame weight. I was carrying so much of how brutal it was to have been abused both sexually, physically, and mentally. I would have stood in front of my mother and my sister, and I would be put in lingerie sets and then compared to each other. This one has that better. This one has that better. And you should be doing that more. Abby looks better in that underwear. Put that underwear on. We would literally be pulled apart for who we were physically. And we were two very, very abused children. And we lived at that time. That was my whole life. But in high school, we lived in a 1-bedroom apartment, the 3 of us. By the time I escaped by getting a job on the soap opera, I was 17 years old. I left the day after I graduated. My mother was telling me that I couldn't do the job because it was a sinning job and the Lord was going to damn me to hell.
But it was okay to put lingerie on.
It was okay to do. There was a lot of contradictions in my life. I don't know if that,
I'm confused.
That's a life lived in a lie. So, but I remember being on the set and they told me that I was playing a twin. And I didn't know how on earth I was going to be able to handle with all of my body. I couldn't transform. I was awkward in my body. And I went to the side of the set and I curled up in a fetal position and started rocking myself and said, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. The concept that I was going to survive a life that had not been survived by those before me was one of the biggest things for me to overcome. And when I hear your story, the understanding that you were going to survive, did you live in a place where you thought that there was only one pathway for you? I never thought I would live past my sister's death age. So 46 was the year my dad and sister both died at the age of 46. I never thought I would live past it. I didn't understand. It was my most difficult year of my life. I was 46. I had no idea. I had only imagined I could live that long. That was the longest. Wow. And when we talk about suicide, and I don't think I've ever been able to be with somebody to say, did you have that feeling?
Nobody took their life my sister took her life when, they were a lot older than me. So Margot was 7 years older than me. My oldest sister who's still alive is 11 years older than me. So
you refer to yourself as a mistake. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes. You're not.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you. I never thought that I wasn't going to survive an actual time But what my biggest fear was, and especially after I had kids and things, and my marriage wasn't exactly what I thought.
It wasn't exactly right.
Happy.
It wasn't all bells and
Wasn't
whistles.
happy times.
It never is.
Anyway, and it went on for a long time, but I kept making the choice because it was so much better than what I'd come from. And I wasn't being abused. I wasn't, I didn't think,
Right.
But what I worried about was that I was going to wake up one day and I was literally going to be crazy. Like I was going to wake up one day and I wouldn't know because I was crazy. So I wouldn't know that I was crazy. So I'd be put in a hospital.
Oh my God.
And I couldn't be a parent. I mean, that was my biggest fear, was that it was like a virus, like
Right,
literally like
catch,
that
you were
I
going to
was
catch
gonna
the
catch
crazy.
it.
Yep.
I was going to catch. So my running, that's why I called it running from crazy.
Yeah.
So my running, my doing, my eating, my controlling, all of that stuff was just so that I would not end up like them or miserable, or if I didn't take my life just in a place of complete just misunderstanding. And then Ernest Hemingway, who I had such admiration for and his work, and it was beautiful. And I was so honored to be a part of the family. But I struggled with the belief that you had to be a little bit, fucked up to be creative.
Yep. An artist
Will
is
it
nuts.
will it be taken away if I get too
Too
clear or too It was all these weird messages. It's a very challenging, I don't know, growth period. But I mean, it went on into my 40s that I just, until you just go, there's always a revelation. There's a moment of revelation where you realize you've been on a path to getting better and you think you're doing better things. But then there's that moment where you can actually shift into a different choice. And I don't think that people feel empowered to make the choice. I feel like we're told that, I don't know, you got to learn more, you got to do this, you got to do that. And it's already okay. You're already okay. Yes. So it's like what you're saying is like, look in the mirror, you're okay. And it will cause tears. It will, because sometimes you just look and you're like, it's like, don't look with the eyes, the surface eyes,
the
look
filters.
With, look with who you are, look with your being, because, and that's when you start to listen. That's when I see you in me and me and you and you, it's like, oh, wait a second.
Right.
We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about how both of you started in the entertainment industry at a very young age.
Oh my goodness.
And we're back.
Welcome back. We're back with Mariel Hemingway.
But, you already talked about being on the soap the moment you graduated from high school, but you were in your first movie, Lipstick, with your sister, Margot.
Yes.
How old were you there?
I screen tested. And very similar to you, like, what's a soap opera?
Yeah.
I was like, what's a screen test? And meanwhile, it wasn't a screen test. I went to New York City because my sister said, I want you to be, this is so strange to me because even today, we just didn't have the best relationship. Like, I was just a brat to her growing up. She's like, oh, she's going to tattle on me because I jumped out the window and went into town, which I probably did. I did tattle on her a couple times. And then, so she calls from New York City. She's a supermodel. She's gone from being somebody we called big pants because she wore sloppy pants and, she had a heavier leg,
Derriere.
Not, as a family, I just think, God, cruel, mean.
Right.
And that's the abuse that she's under.
Right.
She's like being scrutinized. And then all of a sudden she becomes a supermodel. We're all like, Margot? How'd that happen? Margot's a supermodel? Why is she on the cover of a magazine? And why is her hair blonde? Why did she change her name the way she spells it? Anyway, that's a whole other story.
Funny.
But she says, I want you to be in this movie. with me playing my little sister. Since I've never done it before, you can play. I was like, all right. So I go for the screen test, and they put me in a pool on the top of a building in New York City, and they film us, and I'm like laughing, and Margot's like coming up and acting like we're really close.
Oh, that's funny.
So not close.
That is really
we're
funny.
like trying to pretend like we know how to play together. I mean, she's
the
like,
nicest she
even when I
ever
was
was, too.
born, she was like,
Oh my God, that's
I think
funny.
I'm gonna throw you in the trash.
Yeah. Boot her over there. She's cuter.
So
No.
I make this movie, and it was
Thank you, my friend.
thank you.
We just got water deliveries for those who are hearing this. Thank you, Jeremiah.
So it was, it was like, I make this movie. I'm excited. I live in Idaho, so I get to go to LA, and I'm, whatever. I'm playing in a movie. And I literally would pray at night, please make Margot, make this so super successful for her, and keep me down, because it will cause a real problem.
And the opposite happened.
And the opposite happened. And
So
I
you
kid
were
you not, I
praised
was
for your
like,
work, and she was panned.
She was panned and mean, like stupid mean, like talking about her eyebrows, like they had anything to do with acting. But and
That's the business.
whatever.
It's
It's
mean.
it's a mean spirited, and so is fashion. It was a weird time.
And
then
also, people know that when they're writing, to separate two sisters, to do that, to pin one against another is so cruel. Its
is.
intent is to write a more interesting article than the guy before you.
Yeah, and
it
then
is so
no
mean.
consciousness of a
what would
14-year-old girl coming out and like, like Christmas was so not pleasant. It just causes that
Right.
tension, which I'd lived
How could it
with
not?
most of my life. And
Right.
like you, at 16, I was kind of a primary caregiver for my mother who had cancer. So at
Oh, my
16,
goodness.
after making Manhattan, I just couldn't do it anymore. So I moved to Manhattan afterwards. I was like, that was fun. I want to move to Manhattan. It was a bit lonely. I was like,
You keep moving to places that you isolate yourself.
I'm like,
Can we talk about your role in Manhattan?
You did bring up Manhattan, so I feel we would love to talk to you about that. What
I mean, it's interesting because there's a lot of things now in 2021, and you look back at them through that lens of 2021, and you see, you played a senior in high school or 16. How old
I guess
were you?
I played
how old
a
were you?
senior in maybe a senior in high school at the Dalton School
Who's
in New York
dating
City.
this 40-year-old man?
Yes,
And
Woody Allen.
Yes, Woody Allen. And in light of everything, have you seen the documentary? And
No, I have not. And my only it's a bit touchy for me because he wasn't disrespectful of me or unpleasant to me. I mean, he was great. I loved him.
Listen, this is good news to hear. This is not. Don't apologize for not having a bad
it's very
story.
hard to, so I haven't watched it. I don't know them. I don't know Mia. I don't know Rowan. I don't know Dylan. I don't know that story. It's not my story to tell, and I don't make any judgment. I don't know it. I know that my experience was wonderful. Was he making a movie about, sleeping with a 17-year-old girl? Yes, he was. And that's what it was about. And I knew about that.
At the time, was that, because now, of course, we look at it so differently. We'd think that would be the headline of that film then.
What's interesting is then
was it
it
now?
was like
Was it
more,
then?
it's kind of more none of it is it's not that it's accepted. And I'm not condoning any behavior. I'm talking about that movie. But that movie probably couldn't come out today.
Right. That's
100%.
100% couldn't come out.
Would not
and
get made.
yet it was a great and wonderful and interesting film. It's beautiful. It's what it is. So it's an interesting conversation because in many ways we have developed, we've opened up, we're okay with things. And then in many ways we're going like, wait, we got to put a stop to, when it's inappropriate, when it's wrong. And trust me, that's wrong. Like when it's wrong, it's wrong. But I don't know the story, and I don't know them.
right.
So
I think it's really difficult to be able to, and we will look at Harvey Weinstein as the poster boy, rightfully so, for bad behavior. And I always find it challenging I come from a background of abuse. I am one of the only survivors of Harvey Weinstein's repulsive dick that I know. I walked out and I was fired from Beautiful Girls immediately because I did not suck his dick. Nobody sucks his dick because they want to. I will tell you that. It is not happening.
My God.
You didn't get down there because you chose to out of love.
But you talk about how they can suss out somebody from abuse.
And that to me is what's so awful about what the prey. They do not pray. Well, Harvey Weinstein does not come to Anne H as a 50-year-old woman and go, wow, want to go down on me, baby? Hell no. You go to the 21-year-old Anne H who is broken, who has been on a soap opera for 4 years, comes from abuse, does not know anything about pop culture, does not even know who Martin Scorsese is if it were to be brought up. She's struggling. She's trying to survive. I'm doing a movie. I have no idea how repulsive it is. And Donald Campbell, who is the director, is trying to abuse me with Sheena, trying to make me make out and have sex with his girlfriend in an office. I'm trying to quit and told I would be sued. That's the girl that pedophiles, abusers prey on because of that weakness. I didn't have $1 in my pocket. You don't go and treat people like Epstein and others, etc., like that when they are empowered in their own eye center. And that's why we want to talk about You're Okay, because that strength is a very difficult thing to come to on your own. And without the amount of abuse that I went through, I don't know if I would have I was so strong, like, that was never going to happen to me again. He could have hung me upside down, tortured me. That was not going to happen. And I think that's the sadness around the overpowering that was happening in Hollywood and has. And I think that this gets me to my question. I, however, look at people and without being 100%, do we look at artists who are live in the mistreatment of women, and then do we dismiss their art?
Right.
How do we balance that when you're looking at this story of Woody Allen? I would just like your perspective on how we engage in a conversation that respects a human being that we're supposedly, and we know has done disrespectful things, and keep that in a truth that makes sense to our children, to how would I speak to my 19-year-old son about that without disregarding 100% of who that person is? Do you understand the fairness in that?
Let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll dive a little bit deeper into that. Okay. And we're back.
Well, no, I mean, that is the most, it's compelling and difficult. It's difficult. That's why I say it's not my story to tell. And I'm not involved in it because that's not my belief of who he is. And me saying that is not me going on a bandstand defending, but the integrity of his work to me still stays intact because I'm not going down that road with him. And maybe that's cowardly of me or whatever.
I don't think that's cowardly. It's truth. That's the truth that we're talking about.
Well, I think that, and we've talked about this a lot in this climate of cancel culture, the fear is that it stops the conversation completely, and we can no longer even have the conversation that we're having now for fear that you're going to be canceled for even saying, it's just a very slippery slope.
It's a slippery slope because it's true. It is a cancel culture, and there is no conversation. And in a cancel culture, there is only one side.
That's right.
And for that side, it's the right side. And for the other side, it's the right side.
Right.
And if you're anywhere in the middle or want to say, well, gosh, it's not my experience, then you're wishy-washy. And we're going to decide which camp you're in.
That's right.
And
it shuts
that
down the
scares
conversation.
me because I don't want to shut the conversation down to and canceling who they've been to us.
That's right.
In a generation.
And that's why, like, on this show, it's so important to us to talk about this openly and to know that we're in a space where, look, we might not always say the right thing. We might stumble. We might say something that is politically incorrect, but we're our motives are pure. We're just trying to, continue the conversation so that we can all grow and we can't, a lot of people were canceled for good reason.
Yes, that's true too.
But a lot of people misspoke and were not heard, and things were, it's just so important that we all give each other a little bit of a break and let us find our voice and talk about things in a way
and I think you're right. I think we have to go back to being able to have conversations about things, and we have become and the pandemic did that, and the politics
and
of
Trump,
the last year made us
swing so far.
Like the whole weirdness of the politics. If you were interested in one piece of something and it took you down the rabbit hole, and all of a sudden you're getting all this shit about. So I was like, whoa, I didn't invite that, but you become labeled for having a question about something. And sometimes a conversation is not a definitive answer, or you're not saying this is my belief. This is like, I really have to question this. And we're not allowed to be in a gray area anymore.
Right.
We have to choose a side. Who said that's not how we grow? Because, I remember in the 80s when I was like, there was politicians that were on different sides of the,
Do you remember when you didn't know the newscasters, what their political views were? Do you remember that? They kept it hidden and you never knew.
because it was it was unethical for them to sway you one way or the other.
And it was rude to talk about what you're, I remember, it was always, when I grew up, you didn't really say whether you were a Democrat or a Republican. That was private in a way.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, you didn't talk about...
And it wasn't as evil.
Sex, politics, and something else. Religion, thank you. Thank you. That's what it was.
Separation is the distraction from union. Is my, keep them apart, and then they just go, and that's the perfect distraction.
And that's exactly what social media wants you to do. You watch that social dialogue. It's like, oh yay, they're fighting. Like, let's get them going.
Let's get them.
Let's get them
anyway,
going.
they can't not pay attention to the truth.
And I refuse. I refuse to be a part of that. I don't need to say something on Twitter to get people up in arms about anything. It's just not, that's just not me.
Right.
I'm not saying there's not place for that.
That's played.
But it's become so incredibly ugly that we've lost a sense of moral, we've lost our moral compass.
Yes,
there's there's no limits to what you can just chime on about.
Under the guise of having such a huge moral compass. Which,
yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Right.
It's so,
well, that's the flip side.
So righteous.
It's a lie, but we call it the truth.
Right.
Who's the most in danger is the generation that is being told you have to shut up or your opinions. We're teaching them that asking questions is a negative, that listening thereby you don't get included in a conversation, so you don't get to make your own choices. So the whole thing is burying the truth again and not encouraging our children, our teens, to have opinions or ask what happened, what's going on. Why do we have two leaders and one of them is supposed to be the smartest on one side and one's the smartest on the other side, but God knows if the other one gets elected, then that one's not smart and they did the wrong thing. Like, they're two of the smartest people in the world. Don't you think? Let's think about some logic here. Why don't we put our two smartest, most intelligent people together and find out what's brightest about both of them and make it happen? Logic doesn't come into conversation enough. When I read about what a redemption society means, we're born into a redemption society. What does that mean? And I looked it up and I realized here, a redemption society is a society born into the belief system that we are less than something. And that is what our society is. We are less than. I was born into a religious culture. You know what? Jesus is Jesus, and you're not it, and you're never going to be it. So suffer your way through it to get to the end in your death, and maybe you'll be accepted for it, but you don't know. So serve me, and then I'll tell you. And by the way, give me your money while you're doing it, and then maybe you'll earn some right to who you are next life.
Right.
And we've adopted that culture.
Yeah.
And
a less than culture is all, and I mean, talk about how children are, if you feel less than in any way, how can you achieve anything? If you feel less than in any way, and it's the truth, it's like dumb them down.
Keep them stupid.
Yeah. And it's like, I think the food, I think bad food does that. I think it's like we've created a way of, and there's a lot of people that are trying to fight that, but it's like, it's crazy. It's crazy making, because sometimes I think, is there somebody up there with like some twisting his mustache thinking, I've
done it to them now. They all think they're dumb. Well, yay, the society I always wanted. Yay, God.
I think that we've there's been a lot of good things that have happened as we've become more accountable. But I think that we've also become, you become what you're fighting against. It's right. You become the equal opposite. And both parties did that politically. You just dig in so much on one side that you're actually becoming what it is you're opposing.
Well, and the thing is, I don't want this, I don't want this, I don't want this. And eventually you get tired and it smashes you in the face and you're like, oh, that's what I am.
Well, and
the thing that you project out is really, that's yours.
Yep.
And you got to own that. You got to own what you keep saying, no, because in the universe, there is no. So it's always like you're asking for it, which is so weird.
We have our commitments, we call them the betterments. And our first one is the first commitment is stop ignoring what you know. And
pretend to know, and then not to know what you know. Right? Yeah.
And we pretend for so many different reasons. We pretend because our parents tell us. We pretend because a group tells us, or our basketball team tells us, or our brothers and sisters tell us. And we put on the guise of the pretend. Our filters get put so much between us and that mirror that we're all going to look at and say, I'm okay. Right. That this garbage is in between, and it happens in our relationships with friends. It happens in our loving relationships. So we're ending up arguing about each other's garbage and not being in the eye of who we are.
Right. Exactly. That's exactly right.
I know.
It's just so sad, but it's such it's like you said. It's like, how great is it when you realize it's just garbage that you're arguing about? It's like, yay! That doesn't even exist. I created that.
Yes.
And you can uncreate that.
You can uncreate. You can change your habit.
Yes.
We talk about shortening the gap between the pain and the play. Yeah. And when I look at your work and read your book, although I said we read your book, I listened to your book, which I would.
You listen to my book. I don't think anybody's listened to my book.
We would encourage everyone who is listening to listen, because I think there is something very unique in the gift that you give us in hearing your voice tell your story. It's a special additional gift.
Oh, thank you.
And when we talk about adding to the conscious pool of thinking, I think all three of us today would like to encourage the okay to be the beginning of your conversation with yourself and the choices that you're making. If we take that one little pause, just take a pause, think first, not last. Put yourself in the pause before we pounce on what somebody is doing, saying, thinking, and instead of pouncing on that with our own opinion, take a slight pause, tell yourself you're okay, tell the other person in your mind that they too are okay. And in that pause becomes the destination of union and harmony and kindness. We don't have to be everybody's best friend, but allowing the understanding of the okay to join the beginning of what it is to enter a conversation with somebody. I can guarantee you're going to have a fun time, because meeting Mariel Hemingway today has made me feel more okay. And we're adding to the pool of loving kindness and consciousness. And until next time, everybody, thank you, Mariel, for being here with us today. And until next time, everybody, live in loving kindness.
And don't be a dick.
Amen.
That's okay.
We're better together with Ann and Heather.
Well, we hope you enjoyed the interview with Mariel Hemingway.
I'm having so much fun doing Better Together with you. Not only do I get to know Heather better, but the conversations that we are able to have with people who are sharing their stories with us. It's just so fascinating and fun. I feel so lucky. With the conscious thought in mind that people are struggling right now, I really want to reach out to the teens. The college kids are going through a lot. Kids are going through a lot. They need a lot of support. So let's do that as much as we can, as best we can. So until next time, live in loving kindness.
And don't be a dick, but we already said that in the interview, so we
did.
Yeah, I think so. Whatever. Bye. Still don't be a dick.
And don't be a dick ever.
Don't be a dick always.
Just don't be a dick. If we said it once, we said it twice.
Yes, I shan't be a dick.
Shan't be a dick.
And a big thanks to our Better Together team. That's Ryan Tillotson, Sebastian Alcala.
And you, Elizabeth Keener.
Aw, thanks, Ryan. And of course, Ann and Heather.
We're better together with Ann and Heather. Straw Hut Media.